because of American pressure on Israel,
not Israel, while visiting Israel.
and unacceptable to Israel, to the land of Israel.
Welcome to Eyes on Israel. I am Rabbi Pesach Walicki. If you've been following the progress of Israel's war against Hamas, and especially if you've been watching this show, you know that the U.S. has been pressuring Israel to accept a ceasefire deal that would end the war prematurely, before Israel has achieved its primary goal, namely the destruction of Hamas, both militarily and politically. Prime Minister Netanyahu has repeatedly stated that any deal that would end the war without this goal being met is, in his words, a non-starter. But not everyone in Israel feels this way. There is a minority in Israel that is pushing for a ceasefire, even if it means that Hamas will not be destroyed. Now, you may be wondering, why would any Israeli want the war to end with Hamas still in power? The answer is that this minority of Israelis represents the shrinking left wing of Israeli society. And just like in the US, the left controls the mainstream media, giving the impression that there are far more of them than there actually are. This segment of Israeli society has daily demonstrations calling for the toppling of the Netanyahu government and the end to the war if it means that all the remaining hostages are released by Hamas. Family members of the hostages are frequently quoted saying that Israel must accept a full ceasefire to bring back the hostages. They then criticize Prime Minister Netanyahu for not accepting ceasefire deals brokered by the Biden administration and their Qatari and Egyptian counterparts. Those who make this argument often cite Jewish law and tradition, which holds the freeing of captives among the greatest acts one can perform, a good deed that takes priority over all others. But Jewish law also prohibits the redemption of captives for more than their value, in the words of the Talmud. The Talmud, the main corpus of Jewish law, explains that the reason that we must not overpay for captives is to not encourage our enemies from taking additional captives in the future. In other words, even though there's no more noble act than the redemption of captives, we are prohibited from redeeming them if it means increased danger to the larger community as a result. In the early days after October 7th, Israel's leadership made it very clear that the objective of this war is the destruction of Hamas, full stop. It was only as a result of pressure from many of the hostage families and those on the left that the rescuing of hostages was added as a second primary objective. And this has been the messaging of the IDF spokesman's office and the government ever since. But here's the problem. There's no such thing as having two primary objectives. It should be obvious that if there are two distinct objectives, only one can be primary. More to the point of the current crisis with the U.S. administration pressuring Israel, what happens when the two objectives come into conflict with each other? As of this writing, over 600 IDF soldiers have lost their lives since October 7th. These soldiers gave their lives to secure victory over a genocidal enemy that poses an existential threat to the nation of Israel. If that objective is not achieved due to compromises made to save the hostages, Hamas will declare victory, and they will be right to do so. Stopping short of destroying Hamas to save the hostages would confirm the Hamas strategy. It would tell Israel's enemies that taking hostages works, that it is the path to Israel's defeat, which is exactly what the Talmud warned against. The hostage situation is horrific. The danger and suffering that they are enduring is terrible. The anguish of their families is unimaginable. I, like every other Israeli and supporter of Israel, pray daily and yearn for the return of every hostage in health and safety. But I believe that I speak for the majority of Israelis who are uncomfortable speaking the words that so many of us are thinking. Joining me now is Asher Galia. Asher is a reserve commando in an elite unit in the IDF, as was his brother Yosef, who was killed on October 7th while fighting Hamas terrorists in Kfar Aza, one of the towns that was hit hardest by the Hamas atrocities. Asher Galia, welcome to Eyes on Israel.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
So, Asher, as I said at the end of my monologue, teeing you up, what I believe the majority of Israelis are thinking, but don't want to say because they might sound crass or heartless about the hostages, is that this hostage situation really creates a dynamic where we're being forced to potentially surrender in this war to Hamas and not achieve what is meant to be achieved, namely the complete destruction of Hamas. Now, you are involved in a group called the Forum HaGvura in Hebrew, which really means the Heroes Forum, which is a forum of family members of soldiers who've given their lives since October 7th for victory for Israel, that is really offering a message that is, shall we say, different than what I described that is being offered by some of the hostage families and their partners on the left. So could you just share a little bit about the circumstances of your brother's death, but also respond to what I said in my opening?
Yeah. So Yosef, as you said, commando he served in the commando, the Divan unit, counterterrorism unit. He was there. So I'm in reserves. He's there 3.5 years straight ever since he drafted at age 19. And he's been in Judea and Samaria doing arrests, high-profile terrorists. He's been in countless battles, and he's been deploying on a daily basis over there. When October 7th happened, he was in Jerusalem, and he gets a call to be ready. And as he sees how things are going down, he understands the situation is not good, and he takes his friend, and they come even earlier than they were supposed to. They managed to get to a convoy of 4 vehicles in their base around Jerusalem, and they hop on, they get down to Kfar Aza, and they begin battle over there around 11 o'clock. It's relatively early. The IDF is making their way in the masses. So again, he's coming from Jerusalem. The first response is obviously not built on him. It's built on the IDF forces that were there, overwhelmed at this point by thousands of terrorists that crossed the border in unexpected way. In Kfar Aza, the first thing he does is obviously they have their own force there that's already been fighting for around 20 minutes, half an hour. They have people that are killed. He rescues them. They get hit with heavy fire. He's a drone operator. So he puts up the drone. He's able to understand there's 30, 40 plus terrorists deep in Kfar Aza. Happens to be there was hundreds of them in Kfar Aza. And one of the times when he comes back in, he manages to reach an area where IDF, no one was able basically to get there. And 3 hours, someone was lying there almost dead. He was shot in the chest a few times. And Yosef, you can see in this video that we were able to get from a body camera of one of the policemen, was able to take him out. And we see this in the video. He takes him out, rescues him, cares him, and gets back in. Later on, he's killed in the battle with a group of terrorists that were barricading themselves in the houses of the hostages where they were murdering. So
Asher, I mean, so your brother died a hero, and since then you've gotten involved in this Heroes Forum. We have about 3.5 minutes left, so lay it out for us. What is the Heroes Forum's message? What message are you trying to put out there, not only to the Israeli people and the political leadership, but to the world?
Yeah. So our main message is that we cannot stop until we achieve complete victory. And, what a lot of people have trouble in these days is defining victory. Now, what I say to that is, victory is something that's been done for thousands of years. We don't have to invent it. We know that we were victorious in 1967. We know that the Americans, British, and the Allies beat the Nazis in World War II. We know what victory looks like. Victory looks like your enemy surrendering. It looks like taking over any territory that needs to be taken over in order for them not to attack you back. It can come in many forms, but there's very, very obvious ways of victory. Definitely when your enemy understands that they lost, that's one of the signs. And what we are pushing for is for us to understand that without winning this war in complete victory in that fashion, then we're just setting ourselves up for something much worse in the near future. The Hezbollah, another arm of the Iranian regime, They have a plan, to get rid of Israel. And, if to most Israelis it seemed like some kind of lie they've been told or some scary story to get them to vote for a certain party, I think most Israelis now already understand that this is the true reality, that Iran and the Hezbollah and the Hamas and all these people around us, they are committed to our destruction. And Hamas, in a way, I think we got lucky, right? Because Hezbollah and Hamas, and they all could have came at the same time, and then it wouldn't be 200 hostages, it would have been 2,000 or 20,000, and the amount of killed, of course, huge numbers. So the bottom line is, it's a much bigger picture. We're not talking about, hostages need to be rescued. We need to do whatever we can with IDF, like we saw with the Imam last week did. We need to do whatever we can to rescue them. And even, I'll tell you, a deal like what was done the first deal, where we got back 100 hostages for some 2-week break, we know how to pay certain prices in order to bring back our hostages, for sure. But the red line is, we will not help the other side destroy us. And if we don't destroy Hamas completely, then that just lets the other organizations around us understand that they can do the same thing. And we won't do anything back. We won't end their existence.
Right, Asher, we just have about 30 seconds left. Just tell me briefly, what sort of response are you getting from the government or from the media for your efforts?
So the government, we've been meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister. We've been meeting with many politicians, and the government is on our side. They're saying what you're doing is super important. In the Knesset, there are a lot of voices sounding from families of the hostages and from other people, which are saying, we need to stop the war. We need to get back all the hostages in whatever way, even if it means, stopping the war and losing this war, basically. And they're telling us, keep doing what you're doing. This is super important. It gives us the backing we need to say what we have to say and do what we have to do to win this war.
Amen. Well, thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you, Asher Galia, for joining us on Eyes on Israel. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. Welcome back to Eyes on Israel. I'm honored today to be joined in the studio by one of Israel's most veteran diplomats and political figures, Danny Ayalon. Danny Ayalon served in many different positions in the Israeli foreign affairs and the Israeli government, including deputy foreign minister and Israel's ambassador to the United States. Welcome to Eyes on Israel.
My pleasure, Pesach.
So right now we're in the midst of this war, obviously, and you were the ambassador to the United States. What do you make of the current state of U.S.-Israel relations? We see the Biden administration putting a lot of pressure on Israel to commit to a roadmap to a two-state solution, and you were also involved in many of those negotiations back in the early 2000s during the Bush years. How do you assess the current state of U.S.-Israel relations?
Yes, well, first of all, I would like to say that we need to mention the Hakarat Tov. I think that the Biden administration, and rightly so, I don't think it had any other choice, had to come to our aid in order to deter Iran and the Hezbollah. And this is part of the natural alliance between Israel and the United States, regardless of who occupies the White House. Israel is a staunch ally of the United States, and this is not a one-way street. Of course, we are the junior partner here, and we very much appreciate the United States' support. They are our best friend and ally. But also, we are very proud that we can protect American interests here. First and foremost is to fight against terrorism, global terrorism. And today we know that ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah and Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad are all part of the same network. And they target the United States just as they do target us. They are actually very, very strong enemies of Judeo-Christian heritage and values. And this is an anathema to them. That the U.S. and Israel work together, because when the U.S. and Israel are aligned strategically, politically, then there is no force in the world that can really fight us or hurt us. And this is where I come to the issue of the two-state solution. Because yes, as much as it is important, of course, for the American to keep shipping arms and munitions in order to stop Iran, in order to fight and win Hamas and Hezbollah, in order to keep away China and Russia from the Middle East. So you see, it's all part of a global interest of the United States. Aside from the way that the fact that we are a democracy, just like the U.S., we have our Judeo-Christian values, just like the United States. So it is a natural alliance. But when it comes to political issues like two-state solutions, I think this is the wrong message, especially after the massacre of Hamas on the 7th of October. To talk about a two-state solution, it's something which is giving the wrong messages. And I don't think this is viable politically, and I don't think it is doable practically. And most of all, I think it is wrong morally and based on our values and our tradition and our history. So in that respect, I think that this takes away from the American support, and it may prolong the war because it gives oxygen to all the detractors of Israel and the United States in the region, just as it is when the U.S. is keep pushing on Israel in terms of humanitarian aid to Gaza, or threatening to withhold munition shipments. This is just prolonging the war against our interests, but against American interests. So this is actually, it's something which has to be corrected, because I think there's a misguidance here, and I'm not sure it's by whether it's by design or by default. I would like to give the benefit of the doubt that it is by default, but the result is just the same, which is hurting Israeli and American interests just as much.
So when you speak about how you don't believe that a two-state solution is viable, and certainly everyone watching this program knows that I've been saying that, I say that almost every week, I talk about that issue. You were part of the Israeli delegation at the Y Plantation Accords or negotiations, and at Camp David back in the early 2000s, when there were still negotiations going on for what we call the peace process with Yasser Arafat, and the work being done there was on the road towards the creation of a Palestinian state. And also in 2005, Israel pulled out all of its citizens and all of its military from the Gaza Strip, famous Gaza disengagement. And at the time, you spoke in favor of it, but then in later years, you've expressed that you felt that was a mistake. Looking back on all the negotiations with creating the Palestinian Authority and all the negotiations with Yasser Arafat and all of that, do you look back similarly and see that as a mistake? What can you say about the willingness of the other side to have a peaceful coexistence?
And this was what makes this a big mistake. The whole process with Arafat, with the Palestinians, all the way now to Abu Mazen, and of course, not let alone Hamas. And here, I think Israel really came with good faith. And, we are very strong on our beliefs, and it's corroborated by documents, by archaeology, that the land of Israel has only been the land of the Jews. Jerusalem has always been and only capital for the Jewish people, established by King David more than 3,000 years ago. Unfortunately, we know that part maybe of God's prophecy, that there were many invaders to the land. I guess many coveted God's land here. And 2,000 years, of exile. But at the end of the day, the Jews have always stayed here and always returned here, also as the prophets of Israel and the God's promise actually prescribed. And when it came to 1991, 1992, the end of the Cold War, in the United States, under Clinton, they thought that they can reshape the entire Middle East as part of reshaping the entire world. And they did convince Israeli leaders to start a negotiation process with the Palestinians, with the understanding, I think the understanding of Yitzhak Rabin was that there will not be a Palestinian state. Maybe there will be an autonomy. Certainly they would not be armed. And even though it is our land, we are for peace willing to make painful concessions. But we very soon were proved wrong, because the Palestinians never thought of peace. They never wanted to build a Palestinian state, which was never,
And when you were in those negotiations, you saw that they were really not interested in peace? You saw that at the time at the table?
Absolutely. Because first and foremost, they always talked in a derogatory way about the history of the Jews, trying to negate it, just trying to negate everything that our Bible says, whether it's our Bible and also where the New Testament is. And most of all, they never wanted to sign an end of all their claims, false claims, and an end of the conflict. They never wanted to sign an end of the conflict, and this should have been the worrying sign that actually, in their mind, the peace process was just to get a piece of the land, to weaken Israel, and to actually bring alive what they call the stage theory, that they would carve Israel piece by piece until they destroy us all together. Also, a very bad sign was that they never wanted to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. And forget history that they are trying to rewrite, but also in terms of diplomatic, let's say, tools or rules, there is a reciprocity. Israel, during this Oslo, we recognized the right of Palestinians for self-determination. They never recognized the Jewish and Israel right for self-determination. So there was always a lopsided process where we came with good faith and they tried to use it actually to destroy us.
Well, we only have about a minute left. It sounds like you're saying that in our desire for peace, we made some mistakes along the way and ceded some ground in the narrative war, and we're now paying the price for it.
Exactly. We are peace and seeking people. Our first word is shalom. This is how we greet people. Our God is a God of peace. Our Bible is a Bible of peace. Our tradition is tradition of peace. So we, I think, wrongly just thought that just as we desire peace, so will the other side. And this is where we were wrong.
Ambassador Ayalon, thank you so much for joining us on Eyes on Israel. And we'd love to have you back. It's really an honor to be with you today.
My pleasure.
We'll be right back with more Eyes on Israel after this word from our sponsors. Welcome back. On October 21st, 2 weeks after the October 7th Hamas attacks, murdering 1,200 Israelis and raping and torturing countless others, Amy McFadden changed her social media cover photo to an image of an Arab man wearing a keffiyeh-patterned shirt, waving a Palestinian flag. She also posted an image with the words, "Free Palestine," on it. Why is this significant? There are plenty of pro-Hamas, anti-Israel voices on social media, but Amy McFadden is not just someone on social media. Amy McFadden currently serves as Associate Deputy Director for Analysis at the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. She is also a past recipient of the CIA's Award for Excellence in Counterterrorism. Soon after McFadden posted these images, they were taken down due to criticism. A reporter from the Financial Times who contacted the CIA for comment was told, quote, "The officer is a career analyst with extensive background in all aspects of the Middle East, and this post was not intended to express a position on the conflict." Ah, all good. Very nice. Posting Free Palestine and a picture of someone waving a Palestinian flag are apparently not intended to express a position on the conflict. Got it. So happy to hear that. It should be noted that Amy McFadden is a highly credentialed and experienced analyst at the CIA. This is not an imprudent or unintelligent person, I assume. My point is that if someone like this felt comfortable posting these images, taking them down only after criticism from the media, it speaks to the larger cultural milieu that she associates with. Clearly, she thought that she was expressing an acceptable position. Ask yourself what this incident says about the prevailing attitudes about the Middle East and about Israel in the intelligence community. Consider Maher Bitar. In January 2021, Joe Biden appointed Bitar special assistant to the president and senior director for intelligence programs at the National Security Council. And more recently, beginning in January 2024, Bitar's role at the NSC is Deputy Assistant to the President and Coordinator for Intelligence and Defense Policy. As a student at Georgetown University in the early 2000s, Maher Bitar was an executive board member of the anti-Israel activist group Students for Justice in Palestine. Through its 200 or so chapters across the country, SJP organizes pro-Hamas events that routinely call for the complete eradication of the State of Israel. And this wasn't merely some college side gig for Bitar. While pursuing a master's degree from Oxford University, Bitar wrote a thesis on the Nakba, or the catastrophe of the founding of the State of Israel. Let me say this again. Maher Bitar, a lifelong anti-Israel activist who calls for the eradication of the Jewish state, currently advises the President of the United States and coordinates intelligence and defense policy. Let that sink in. Since we launched this show over 3 months ago, I've repeatedly asserted that the Biden administration is trying to save Hamas, that they want Israel to lose the war. And during that time, as we all witnessed the deterioration of U.S.-Israel relations and the coddling of Iran and Hamas, there are many among us, and even a number of guests I've had on this show, who have made the mistake of attributing this policy direction to the fact that there's an election coming in November. The assertion by many intelligent people whom I respect that the pressure on Israel is due to Biden's desire to curry the favor of Muslim Americans, to win Michigan, as they say, is just plain wrong. And it's important that we stop saying it. You see, so long as we fool ourselves into thinking that Biden and Blinken are coddling Israel's enemies because they want to win Michigan, we cause ourselves to miss what is really going on. The personnel and policy choices made by Biden and his gang have strengthened Israel's enemies since day one. Was appointing Maher Bitar in January 2021 meant to win Michigan? Was the renewal in early 2021 of funding to the Palestinian Authority despite their funding of terrorist murderers done to win Michigan? Was the effective lifting of sanctions on the sale of Iranian oil, enriching Iran to the tune of tens of billions of dollars, done to win Michigan? Bottom line is this: the Biden regime is anti-Israel, ideologically as well as strategically. And those people I've mentioned are not the only ones. Joining me now is Frank Gaffney, my dear friend and executive chairman and founder of the Center for Security Policy. He's also host of Securing America on this network, on Real America's Voice. Frank Gaffney, welcome back to Eyes on Israel.
Great to be with you as always, Rabbi.
So, Frank, I mentioned a couple of the nefarious characters, and people still might be thinking that maybe we just have a problem of this or that person. You've been tracking the infiltration of these Muslims and Muslim sympathizers and enablers in the U.S. administration for decades. We talked about this last time you were on the show. There was someone specific who hit the news a little while back who was somewhat involved with Iran that I'd like you to drill down on and explain to our viewers another name that should become a household name for them, and that's Robert Malley. Can you tell us about Robert Malley and anything else you want to add to my open?
The open was terrific. Let me just insert something before coming to Robert Malley, because I think it's a bit of context that's really important here. We were told back in the 2020 election cycle that the Biden administration in prospect would be interested in Muslim votes. But again, I don't think that was the principal consideration for Joe Biden going to a group called Mgage in July of that year, a Muslim Brotherhood Front organization directly involved in the politics of the United States, and sought their support, yes, politically, but the promise that he made was that he would put Muslims throughout his administration. And I think that met a larger ideological agenda rather than just a narrow, immediate political one. And that agenda is to actually move the United States dramatically in a different direction towards the Middle East, specifically, as was done in what I call the first two Obama-Biden administrations. We're in the third currently, to elevate the role of our mortal enemy, Iran, as a regional hegemon, and to reduce, if not essentially eliminate, Israel's role as the principal ally of the United States and, an important, source of stability in that region when it is strong. That agenda was very much the agenda of this fellow Robert Malley, as you've asked about him, and rightly so. Who is this guy? Well, this is a fellow who had been in and out of the Obama administrations. This is a guy who throughout his time in and out had been advancing the agenda of, a rapprochement with not only Iran, but its various terrorist proxies, including Hezbollah and Hamas. And Rob Malley also was instrumental in getting a number of people, when he came back into the third Obama-Biden administration at the beginning of the Biden presidency, to get a number of his friends and like-minded pro-Muslim, pro-Islamist, pro-Sharia, pro-Iran ideologues into positions of influence throughout that administration. What makes this all particularly relevant is the thing that I think you referred to a moment ago, and that is Rob Malley has been suspended from the State Department. It's a long suspension, but apparently he was engaged in compromising extremely sensitive information. The rumor on the street is by sharing it, either directly or indirectly, with Iran. So he's been sidelined, but unfortunately his allies, his friends, his proxies, his surrogates are still very much in business inside the Biden administration and doing, I think, incalculable harm.
So, Frank, we've known for decades that the career State Department types have never been friendly to Israel. And there's always been a kind of tension between the elected branch, both the Senate and the House, as well as the presidency, that have always been more pro-Israel because the American people are pro-Israel, right. and these career diplomats who are in there. It sounds like with the Obama-Biden group, the State Department people have finally gotten their wish, and they now have an executive branch that's amenable to their approach, meaning this isn't just a flash in the pan, as I said, about trying to win Michigan. This is really a shift towards this Arabist anti-Israel position.
I fear so, and that's in part because what we're seeing is not only the political arm of the executive branch embracing that anti-Israel agenda, and as you and I have talked about on a number of occasions on your program as well as mine, we're watching this translating into horrific undermining and even sabotaging of Israel in the course of this war. They are making some commitments of arms shipments and so on, yes, but basically everything else has been hostile to Israel. I think that's because of not only the political people, but also, as you've mentioned, a number of people who are now burrowing in, like this gal at the CIA, into the permanent bureaucracy.
All right, Frank, we've got about 40 seconds left. Please tell the Eyes on Israel audience about your show, where they can find you, how they can follow your work.
Well, just two other names that I want to throw into the mix.
Oh, sure.
Ariane Tabatabai, Chief of Staff for the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations, Low Intensity Conflict, Mali, surrogate and ally, and Hati Amar, the guy who is supposed to be the representative to the Palestinians for the U.S. government, both very hostile to Israel and I believe to us. SecuringAmerica.tv is where you can find our show.
All right, thank you very much, Frank. We'll have you back soon. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, my friend.
We'll be right back with more Eyes on Israel in just a moment. Welcome back. Bible lovers yearn to uncover the authentic meaning of the Hebrew Bible, but often feel stuck with English translations. There's so much more to discover, but they don't know Hebrew. Israel 365 has the perfect solution, Israel Bible Plus. Israel Bible Plus is a revolutionary way to access the treasure trove of Hebrew Bible wisdom no matter where you are in the world. With a subscription to Israel Bible Plus, you'll gain exclusive access to premium video courses from top Bible educators in Israel. These scholars will unlock the secrets of the Bible and transform your understanding of Scripture. You can't find courses like these anywhere else, but that's not all. Every month you'll receive a new, lightweight volume of the Israel Bible in a stunning full-color design. It's not just a Bible, it's a personal study companion with space for note-taking, maps, charts, and transliterations. Transform your Bible study experience today. Sign up for Israel Bible Plus and uncover the true depths of Scripture. Your journey to deeper understanding starts now. Sign up for Israel Bible Plus today at Israel365store.com. That's Israel365store.com. Last week, we studied the second of three verses in Numbers chapter 6, known as the priestly blessing. That's the blessing that God commanded Aaron the high priest and his sons after him to recite as a blessing over the people of Israel. As previously mentioned, this blessing is still recited as part of the synagogue prayer service to this very day. If you missed the previous teachings on the first two verses of the priestly blessing, be sure to go check those out. Numbers chapter 6, verse 26 reads as follows: "The Lord shall lift up his face to you and grant you peace." The first half of this final verse of the priestly blessing describes God lifting up his face to Israel, the recipient of the blessing. Now, what exactly does that mean? We should note that many English translations translate the phrase as, "the Lord shall turn his face to you." This translation is imprecise, as the Hebrew verb here clearly means to raise up or to lift up. This verb simply does not mean turn or change direction anywhere in the Bible. Apparently, these translators were uncomfortable with a description of God raising his face to human beings as though he is below and we are above. This is an example of translators choosing not to translate directly because the text of the Bible doesn't make sense to them. The problem, of course, is that the Bible is not poorly written. If the word lift up is used here, we must seek an understanding of the verse that accounts for this word. And that's what it says. So the Hebrew for the first phrase of the verse is made up of four words. Yisa will lift up. Adonai, that's the Lord, that's his name. Panav, his face. Elecha, to you. Now, another translation that is common is the Lord will look on you with favor. These translations are based on the way the metaphor of lifting of the face is used elsewhere in the Bible. In 20 of the 25 times that this expression appears, it refers to someone treating or viewing someone favorably or with partiality. Here are a few examples. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 15. "You shall not perform injustice in judgment. You shall not favor the impoverished." Literally, do not lift up the face of the impoverished. "You shall not defer to the great. With righteousness you shall judge your counterpart. Or Proverbs 18, verse 5, it is not good to be partial to the wicked, literally to lift the face of the wicked, and so deprive the innocent of justice. One more example, Psalm 82, verse 2. How long will you defend the unjust and show partiality to the wicked, literally lift up the face of the wicked? In all these examples, in all these verses, the metaphor of lifting the face of someone means to look favorably upon that person, to judge them favorably. The problem with translating our verse according to this meaning is that here it is God's own face that he is lifting up. As we see from the examples cited here, where lifting the face refers to treating someone favorably, the face that's being lifted, so to speak, is the face of the one who's being treated favorably, not the face of the one who's treating them favorably, the one doing the lifting. Is that confusing? Let's simplify the point. If our verse means that the Lord will look on you with favor, the Hebrew should have said the Lord will lift up your face. But our verse says that God will lift his own face towards you. Now, there are only 5 verses in the entire Bible in Hebrew that describe someone lifting their own face. 2 of these verses describe someone lifting their face up, either literally or figuratively, without indicating to whom their face is being lifted, towards whom. One is, he looked up, meaning he lifted his face at the window and called out, who is on my side? 2 Kings chapter 9, verse 32. And then we have a verse in Job, if you put away the sin that is in your hand and allow no evil to dwell in your tent, then, free of fault, you will lift up your face, you will stand firm and without fear. Job 11, verses 14 and 15. There are only 3 verses that describe someone lifting their own face to someone. In all cases, the lifting is figurative and not literal. One is our verse here in the priestly blessing, and the other 2 are these. Surely then you will find delight in the Almighty and will lift up your face to God. You will pray to him and he will hear you and you will fulfill your vows. That's in Job 22. And then we have Abner, who said to Asael, quote, turn aside from following me. Why should I strike you to the ground? How then could I lift up my face to your brother Joab? That's in 2 Samuel chapter 2. Both of these verses describe someone who is subordinate, looking to the other in expectation or supplication. Abner was concerned that he would not be able to justify himself to Joab if he harmed Asael. And Job is obviously in a subordinate position vis-a-vis God when praying to him. In both examples, the one lifting his own face is in need of help or approval or reassurance from the one he is lifting his face to. So to sum this up, whenever it says in the Bible that someone is lifting his face to someone else, it means that he is looking expectantly, looking with a request, or looking for reassurance. What does it mean that God will lift his face towards us in the priestly blessing? Is God looking up to us expectantly? In the comments on the 2 previous verses of the priestly blessing, I explained that the point of each of these blessings is that God blesses us in order to give us the tools that we need to fulfill our mission to build his kingdom. With this in mind, I'd like to suggest that our verse is making a very powerful theological and spiritual statement. The 3 verses of the priestly blessing describe the way God blesses us and gives us the strength and ability to carry out his will on this earth. In the opening verse, he'll bless us with abundance and protect us so that we have the resources that we need to fulfill God's mission. Then in the second verse, he will redeem us from exile and hardship. He'll get rid of the barriers that stand in our way and give us favor in the eyes of others so that we can influence humanity to bring them to faith in God. Finally, in this third verse, we're told that God depends on us for the realization of the ultimate goal of building his kingdom, leading to eternal peace, shalom, the culmination of all things. When it says that the Lord will lift up his face to you, it means that God will look expectantly and hopefully to us. He waits for us to do our part on his behalf. It is we, the people of faith in God of Israel, who are responsible to build his kingdom. He will bless us with all that we need for the task. He will protect us and redeem us from oppressive forces that stand in our way. He will give us all the talents and resources necessary for the mission. But in the end, it is God who looks up to us, so to speak, waiting for us to complete the job. And he will grant us peace. Shalom, the ultimate expression of the fullness of God's kingdom on earth, is in our hands. He has granted it to us as a task and as a mission. God raises his face to us, turning to us for us to use all the blessings that he's given us for his sake. The greatest blessing that God bestows upon us is the partnership that he forges with us for the building of his kingdom here on earth. He empowers us and protects us so that we have the privilege and responsibility of being actively involved in repairing the world and building his kingdom. And that's what the priestly blessing is really all about. It's about giving us strength and giving us inspiration and letting us know that God is giving us the resources and removing all the obstacles in our way. And ultimately, he wants us to exercise our human agency to build his kingdom here on earth. And that's my blessing to all of you. If you enjoyed this teaching and the other teachings we do here on verses, if you enjoyed this teaching and the other teachings that I share here on Eyes on Israel, please pick up a copy of my latest book, Verses for Zion. It's a book of teachings just like this, of biblical teachings where I dig into the original Hebrew of 77 different verses in the Bible, pulling out those lessons that are embedded in the original language. So much is lost in translation, so much of the subtlety of the original language. And in Verses for Zion, I unlock the deeper meaning of all of these verses. It's written in an easy-to-use devotional format, and it's a great way to support this show. So go to getvfz.com, and pick up your copy of Verses for Zion. Like I said, great way to support Eyes on Israel and great way to get inspired and empowered for the task ahead. Thank you so much for watching Eyes on Israel. God bless you. See you next week.